What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the All In Podcast, a podcast for casual leaguers. I am the League Dad, and I am joined today by my awesome co-host, Nighthawk. You remember him, Style on him 123. He's a regular, and we have a new co-host, Mike the Support. I'm excited to have these guys on. You are tuning in to a Locked In segment, and today we are going to be talking about good champions to climb low elo with. And by low elo, I know that's kind of subjective to a lot of people, but by low elo specifically, I'm talking about anybody unranked all the way up to gold. And yes, people might say, well, platinum, you know, depending on where you're at, that they say that's low. To me, it's high because majority of the league community is in unranked to gold. So we're talking to the masses here, and if you're listening, then more than likely that's you, and you should be proud of that. It's okay, and we're gonna have a lot of smart people say a lot of smart things and help you climb on the rift. And I'm actually, to be honest, I gotta be upfront. I wanted to do this segment for selfish reasons because I need to climb out of gold. So I'm very looking forward to what you guys have to say today. So Nighthawk, you guys know him already. Style on him the first time he's on Facecam, so we're happy to see his lovely face. And Mike the Support joining us for the first time. Look, it's a tradition here, man. When you're a first time co-host, you have to give us a little intro. Tell us how you got into League, your history with it, how you came to love the game, and kind of where you're currently at in your climb. So I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes just to give us a little introduction.
Why, thanks a lot. So I'm Mike. I've been playing League of Legends since Season 1. I think I started playing around Vayne or York patch. It's one of those two. So I go really way back, and I got into it just because I think, like with most people, right? If someone tells you, "Hey man, have you ever heard of this awesome game called League of Legends?" And then you try it, and then you're hooked on it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think first season, like with most people, I was silver. I actually started playing properly in Season 2, and then Season 3, I actually managed to get to top 1,000 on the EU West.
Nice.
And then from there, I kind of stagnated because I mostly went into like coaching because I don't know if anyone was there back then, but some guy announced a LoL coaching website, and that's where a lot of my time went to League of Legends.
Nice. So at the moment, who's your current champion of choice when climbing, or just in general?
I would say specifically for low elo, right? I would say Renekton, in my opinion, is really solid.
Well, what about you? Personally, you. We'll talk about the low elo ones, but you personally, what champs are you enjoying?
Ooh, I personally have a sweet spot for AP supports. I'm one of those guys. I abuse AP supports. Right. I really enjoy playing Fiddlestick support because he's probably one of the highest DPS supports in team fights.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, man. AP support and Renekton, about the only two things I like playing. So that's awesome, man. Okay, cool. Well, it's nice to meet you finally and get to know you a little bit. It's interesting. We're excited to get some of your perspectives here. So like I said, we're just going to jump right into it. Today, we're really talking about specific champions that these guys have handpicked for you guys out there that they're going to talk about as far as champs that are good for low elo and why they're good. And then they're going to give you a little bit of tips and tricks, builds, runes, that sort of thing, so that if any of them interest you, you can go ahead and get out there and start trying to climb and try your hand on it. So we're just going to start right off with Nighthawk. I'm going to go in order and clockwise here on my screen. So Nighthawk, who is the champion that you have picked for all our listeners today?
So you can probably guess. It's one of the more infamous low elo, and I say low elo in the nicest way.
Of course.
Powerhouses. Amumu, the Sad Mummy. This champion has been part of Ron Zodia since Season 1 or 2 for so long. Just a fantastic jungler. He's only gotten better throughout the years. Riot has been adding small parts to his kit throughout the past few patches. And this last patch recently, he actually received a fairly large buff to his passive and to his Q. So I figured that now is the perfect time to start playing him and start learning how to get out of bronze, get out of iron, and get up to at least gold to get your free skin.
Well, let me ask you then, what is it inherently about Amumu that makes him good in low elo, and why not so much in high elo? I mean, not saying that you can't find success in high elo, but why more specifically in our target audience today in the low elo?
So the best part about a Mumu is his insane CC. His ultimate is a AoE around the size of Fiddlestick's ultimate. It's an entangle, which isn't quite as good as a stun, but it's almost there. And it does actually a decent amount of damage, and it also applies his passive, which we'll talk about more in a second. So he's basically the ultimate team fighting champion, a huge AoE damaging stun in quotation marks. So that's like the ideal situation for any low elo team fight, because most of the time you'll have a lot of people grouped up. You'll have team fights lasting probably less than 10 seconds, if not 5 seconds, and you'll have a lot of people who don't want to stay still for very long. So Amumu just gets in the middle of that, presses his R button, and just messes with everyone's plays. And he also just sets up a lot of good AoE ultimates on top of that. Like, let's say you did have a Fiddlesticks support. Amumu gets on top of them, ults, and then Fiddlesticks comes in, lands his ult. Not only are they all in there to take the damage, they also take bonus true damage because of his passive. The reason that he doesn't really scale that well into the higher elos, and I will preface this by saying I've only ever gotten to around mid-platinum, so I'm assuming this goes up to even gets exacerbated worse once you get to diamond and masters, but he's fairly telegraphed, and it's pretty easy to play around him once you get that game knowledge to learn that when he wants to go in, when he wants to land ultimates, using his early game weakness by counter jungling him or dueling him early because he is not a duelist. He's a tanky engaged jungler. So he falls short in a lot of different situations. He's very susceptible to counter jungling. So advanced junglers can get in there and starve him out, take his buffs, which are very important early game. And then it's just abuse them that way. But usually in the lower elos, you don't run into that type of jungler very often unless it's a Smurf, which we'll probably lose anyway.
So, question then. We talked about, so you mentioned a lot of his strengths. What are some of his weaknesses and things that people should be aware of if they want to pick up a Mumu? And wait, more importantly, is easy enough for even the League Dad to play?
Yes.
On the League Dad scale, what, is he playable for me?
Well, since he only has one skill shot and it has a fairly crazy hitbox, I would say that even the leaguiest of dads can play him.
All right.
Generally speaking, if you can land a Blitzcrank hook or a Thresh Q or something like that, you can probably play a Mumu.
All it takes is one.
Hard to play.
All it takes is one, man.
All it takes is one, exactly.
It takes one. All right, so tell me about some of his weaknesses and what people should watch out for when they play him.
So, like I said a couple minutes ago, he's very weak to counter jungling early.
Okay.
If you're playing against something like Udyr or even a Kayn, I don't think Kayn counter jungles quite as much. Ivern, something like that. He's just going to go inside your jungle where you're not, take all of your camps, and then gank a lane because he's going to be stronger than you until level 6-ish.
Gotcha.
So have your duo or whoever you're playing with try to get them to ward your camps. A ward on red buff or blue buff is very important. You can actually collapse on a lot of people with that, with the help of your support or your mid laner or whoever you're playing with, and get kills onto the enemy jungler, because generally speaking, nobody wards their own camps in low elo. So they'll be very surprised if they're going in to take your red buff and then all of a sudden 3 people show up and get a first blood onto them.
You're assuming though that they collapse and that they watch the map. You'll have to ping quite a bit. Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. Just ping. Ping over and over again. No, I like that. All right, well, let's get into some of the runes and stuff. What are we taking here?
Fairly basic for anyone who has a lot of CC. You'll be taking almost in every situation Resolve with Aftershock, Fount of Life, Conditioning, and Overgrowth. This is kind of just like the basic tanky engage runes. Aftershock is very strong. Makes him a lot tankier when he does land that ultimate, because it's a lot harder for the team to just burst him down. Fount of Life is just kind of like the best out of a bad situation there. There's really no good rune in that rune spot for him. It also kind of gives your team some form of sustain, but what are you going to do? Conditioning, again, very strong. Good amount of resistances. Scales into the late game well. Just a good rune. And then Overgrowth, same thing with Conditioning. more HP is good. As your secondary, this is where it sort of switches up a little bit. You can kind of do whatever you want here, but I like to go precision, and I like to take either Triumph or Presence of Mind. Triumph gives you a little bit more sustain in a team fight, keeping you alive, and then Presence of Mind can actually make your ultimate on a lot lower cooldown, so if you want to spam it on ganks, it can help with that. And then I almost always take Legend Tenacity, because Tenacity is amazing, and Amumu is very susceptible to CC, so always good to have that. Stat bonuses, really, again, it's your pick. I like to go either double AP and armor, or if you're having trouble with your clears, you can go armor, attack speed, and armor. That will make it a little easier to get those early game clears because you'll have a little bit more of attack speed. And attack speed's actually good to apply your curse as well.
Okay. So now let's talk about the build, and you can be pretty general here. I mean, just kind of a standard build, and then maybe some situational items that you would take in the later game.
Yeah. Amumu, again, is pretty basic. There's two main builds you want to go, the tanky build and then the more AP damage build.
Yes.
Tanky builds, generally speaking, Cinderhulk, Abyssal Mask, Adaptive Helm or Spirit Visage if you're against an AP heavy comp, or a Thornmail / Random Winds against an AD heavy comp. Gargoyle's Stoneplate is amazing on him just because of how Amumu plays and how Gargoyle's Stoneplate does. If you're not familiar, that item has an active which gives you a large amount of resistances and doubles your HP if you're around a lot of enemy champions. So basically, you just want to go in, ult, and press Gargoyles, and all of a sudden you're super tanky. And then for boots, 9 times out of 10 you'll go Merc Treads. Maybe if you're against a assassin or not assassin, a strong AD carry or a Yasuo, you'll go Tabbies. But Merc Treads are pretty much the best boot choice in almost every situation. And then situational items, like I said, Randuin's, Frozen Heart, Azania's maybe. If you want a little bit more damage in your build, you can substitute out some of the tanky items for Zanya's, Liandry's, Rylai's, Banshee's Veil, and even Runic Echoes instead of Cinderhulk. That makes you do a very large amount of damage to the squishies.
Okay, cool. And so now let's talk about, that's a lot of options. So you just definitely got to play according to what you're playing against. But even with, Cinderhulk buff is nice, especially, since that's one of the items that he will most likely build. But now let's talk about kind of early game, mid game, late game. What are our goals? What kind of win conditions are we looking for? Early on, are we looking to gank? Are we looking to just maybe clear? And then into the mid game, are we looking at team fight more? Obviously objectives as general jungler principles. But talk us through that with early, mid, and late.
So early game is when Amumu's at his most vulnerable. It's when you're going to want to safely clear, not get too low, keep an eye out for where that enemy jungler is, and if you can, try to get that Scuttle Crab, because Scuttle Crab is so important to a jungle these days. But if you're in a situation where you just don't think it's safe to get that Scuttle Crab, or you don't see your mid laner, or you don't have bot lane priority, it's okay to give it up and just go to Krugs or Wolves. You'll want to keep an eye out on what the lanes are doing. Amumu doesn't have the best pre-6 ganks, but if you can land your Q, or if you can get close enough to blow a summoner spell, that's usually good enough in low elo to get the lane an advantage.
Let me stop you real quick, because I think you actually hit a more important point. Is what's the skill orders of things that we should be level up? Let's talk about that first before we get into that. Pause on the talk through, but let's talk about skills.
So if you're starting at a buff, you can go W. That gives you % health damage. His W is his tears. It's the AoE ability that does % health damage over time. That will help you clear your buff pretty quickly. Then you'll want to get your E. You can actually even start E if you want to start it like Raptors or Wolves or anything, just in case there's something wrong with your buffs. Then going into there, you want to max E first, because it does a ton of damage and it resets very quickly. The E actually has a neat little passive where if you get auto-attacked by anything, it actually reduces the cooldown by a second. Nice. So if you're versus auto-attack heavy champions like a Jax, Tryndamere, Yasuo, AD carry, you'll have your E up quite a bit. So it actually can do a lot of damage. Nice. And then you'll probably want to put at least 2 or 3 points into Q. With this new buff, it's not really as important because it's on such a lower cooldown. But getting it down from 12 seconds to maybe 10 seconds is pretty important if you're trying to get 2 Qs off in a skirmish. But generally speaking, max E, max W, max Q.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Okay. All right. Now, resume. Talk us through that early game. You said weakness, weak early game, trying to farm as safely as possible. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Amumu actually has a fairly safe clear, especially with the completed jungle item Stalker's Blade, which is generally what you want to go. You'll never run out of mana. Since all of your stuff is AoE, you have pretty good sustainment taking camps, so you don't really have to worry about being low once you get that first back. Also, with the Stalker's Blade, smiting an enemy champion when you go for a gank is really strong because it slows them down and speeds you up, meaning you can get towards them and try to land that Q a little safer instead of going for a max ranks Q, which will probably get dodged unless they're potatoes that you're playing against.
Yeah.
So to summarize, early game, farm it up, try not to get killed by the enemy jungler, go for ganks if they look good, don't try to force anything too hard early, it's not going to work out to your favor. But this is where Amumu gets really good, it's when you hit to the mid and late game, and this is when he gets his ultimate, because his ultimate, and a lot of people don't really realize this, you don't have to use your ultimate to get a 5-man ult every single time. You can use that in a gank to catch one person out, and it's not a waste. If you can get a kill, it's worth it. Especially once you get some CDR, and maybe if you took Presence of Mind, it's really not on that long of a cooldown. So going for a gank once you hit level 6, it sort of switches it up a bit. If you can get in range to ult before you Q, it's sort of like the Morgana thing, where if you ult them and then land the Q after they're stunned, they get CC'd for way longer. So if you want to walk up to them, ult, wait for them to get unstunned, and then Q them, suddenly they're stunned for 2 to 3 seconds, and they're almost certainly dead, because you do a lot of damage too. Other than that, the really part that Amumu shines in is his team fighting ability, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. Amumu is the team fighting champion in low elo.
Right.
You want to engage onto any target you can. You just want to land your Q on anyone you can, anyone that's close to a group of people, and then instantly ult. If you have to, flash ult, but try to get your ult off on as many people as possible in the team fight. You'll not only do a lot of damage, catch them out of position, keep them from using their auto attacks and movement abilities. You also allow your team, like let's say if you have a Morgana or a Fiddlesticks or even an Orin or something like that, you'll make it that much easier for them to land the follow-up stuns and the follow-up abilities that will make that team fight just instantly so much easier for you. He's basically the perfect engager in low elo. He's so easy to use, pretty reliable ult. The only situation where you'll probably get frustrated in is if you get CC'd before you get to land into the middle of the comp, and then you won't get the ult, and people will run away. But having the enemy team run away from you isn't really the worst thing in the world in low elo.
That's right. They're scared. Sort of just gotta flex on them, man. Exactly. Yeah. It's about the mind games. But so here's a question then: if you're wanting to pick Amumu, who are a couple of champs to think about banning, so that maybe you can avoid some of that early game pressure? Like who would you most likely ban if you're wanting to play Amumu?
Yeah, the champions you least want to play against as Amumu are probably anyone who can counter jungle you the best. So you want to look out for good Udyrs. Lee Sin gets played a lot in low elo. Generally speaking, he's not amazing, but he probably will beat you.
Okay.
Ivern is a pick that's resurfacing a lot, and he's not really a duelist, but he can counter jungle you to hell, so just keep an eye out for him. Generally speaking, anyone who is just really, really strong early game, or anyone you personally struggle against, just give them a ban. It's not worth to try and outplay them late game if you can just not die early game with them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Hey, Mike, the support and style on him. I know we've been listening a lot. Did you have any thoughts or anything you wanted to add on Amumu? Any variations of play style of what he said, or any other tidbits?
The only thing I've seen people do on Umumu differently is some people take Predator, and that's
Oh.
also not that bad. I don't know about in low elo, but I know in, I wouldn't say high elo, but like gold plat, some people take Predator because you can run in it, and then if you take Predator, you don't even need to land your Q, right? You just
Yes, that's
literally
me.
walk on top of them. Yeah,
Okay.
but I think apart from that, everything is like, yeah, everything was pretty
Okay.
standard, right? Unless you want to go
Alright.
full AP and Mumu.
Yeah.
Yes, that's me.
That's a lot of fun, but I wouldn't say. I mean, it could work in low elo.
Yeah,
I
low
think
elo for sure.
If AP or Mumu was to work anywhere, it would be in low elo.
There you go. Okay. Any other things to add, Nighthawk or Mike Sport? Any other maybe hidden tips or something about Mumu? Or are we good to move on?
Yeah, real quick.
Sure.
Just about as a passive. A lot of people probably don't remember this if they haven't played a Mumu in a while. A Mumu's passive got changed from what it was, which I believe was like lowered magic resist for the enemy team, to he applies his curse on auto attacks and his ultimate. And the curse allows or gives your damage bonus, any magic damage, bonus true damage on top of that. So the way that works is it's, I believe, 13% now. So if you do 100 magic damage on somebody and they have the curse on them, they take 13 true damage on top of that.
Ooh,
So
okay.
you're doing 100 magic damage and 13 true damage. So because of that, Amumu fits very well into AP comps with a lot of AP damage. He has the ability to kind of not shred tanks, but take the edge off of the tanks that might have been harder to kill because you had a more AP heavy comp. So just keep that in mind. He's a good pick when you have a strong mid laner or a strong AP support.
Great. All right, man. Well, awesome. I'm definitely, I've been playing jungle a lot, so I'm taking him in tomorrow. Ranked. First game. Never played him.
If you don't win your first game, I will personally apologize to everyone on this podcast.
You heard it. You heard it here. Okay. All right, moving on. Style, let's go to your pick. Who do you got for us, man?
Lux, but in mid lane. I hate Lux support.
Come on, man.
Come
on, man.
Thing that I could ever get into.
Why? I love Lux support.
Anytime I get Lux support, I dodge. I don't even wait unless they pick first. If they pick Lux first, then I can pick like a mage or something. But I'm not playing like a traditional ADC with Lux.
Okay.
It's terrible.
All right. That's his opinion. Sure, whatever. Okay, no, go ahead. All right, Lux mid. Lux in the mid lane is what we're focusing on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take Lux anywhere. Even Cheer sent me a message saying, "Can I play Lux in the jungle?" Even Lux jungle is.
Oh my gosh, that is how much you hate Lux support. Wow, I didn't know the hatred ran that deep.
If you miss Q on Lux, you just instantly die.
Wrong.
It's so bad. In support.
I'm just kidding. No, you're right. You're right. I like playing Lux support, but I think you're right on the sentiment that if I was ADC, I wouldn't want Lux support. But as far as the mid lane goes, why? Let's talk about first why this is your go-to pick for a low elo.
Yeah, so normally I play Lux mid and Lux ADC, but I wouldn't recommend Lux ADC to low elo players because the matchups are really hard. In bot lane, in mid lane they're pretty decent because again she has like an AOE ultimate. She has like CC, she has a shield. She's just an all around good team fighter. And one of the things I realized in low elo is that you don't have things like split pushing, you don't have things like pushing outside lanes. You only have things you have a lot of group up and team fight. And Lux is, I would say, in the top 3 siegers in all of League of Legends, and the only 2 champs I'd put on top, like above that, would be Xerath and Ziggs. Maybe Ahri, because she has her charm. But Lux is really good mid lane. I think one of the good reasons is she has lots of wave clear. So even if you're losing the game, you can stall by just pressing E and then just clearing a whole wave. You can even use your ult for wave clear because it has such a short cooldown.
Yeah, I like that because I'm usually losing, and so I can just wave clear and try to hope I can group with my team, land a Q. I like that. Okay, so it makes a lot of sense. I know personally when I'm playing mid lane, the very few times Lux is someone I don't want to go because I can't dodge skill shots and I'm in low elo. So there you go, makes sense. So all right, let's get into I guess some of the weaknesses. I mean, obviously her range is strength. She has that Q, which is her root. I guess it's a root, right? Or is it a snare?
It's a
And
snare.
yeah, it's a snare. So she has a lot of really good things. Her ult does a lot of damage. She scales really well, I think, right? Is that right? She does a lot of good things. But what are some weaknesses then, I guess,
I
about
think one
Lux?
of the biggest weaknesses is that she really struggles against assassins.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say just assassins because she does well into things like LeBlanc and things like that. But I would
Yeah.
say assassins like Katarina, Zed, Yasuo, all which are big. Low elo picks. But
Mhm.
if you can survive and just like, so I think one of the main things you need to do when you're playing against assassins is just give up CS. I wouldn't say
Right.
give up all the CS, but like once you get your lost chapter, you can literally just press E and farm.
Okay.
Like you don't even need to walk up into auto range.
Okay. I like that. So
Uh,
give us then. Oh, go ahead and finish your thought.
so basically, I would just say, well, you also need to like ward pretty well because if
Okay.
you get ganked, it's I wouldn't say impossible to outplay them. I mean, you have one of the things about Lux is her snare hits two people, not just one.
Uh-huh.
So you can hit
Oh,
if
that's
you get
true.
ganked,
Yeah.
you can
Mhm.
ideally hit both of the people coming. And they
Okay.
buffed Lux like sometime this season where even the second target takes the same damage because it used to be that the first target takes all the damage and then the second target only takes 50%, but now it's 100% on both.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, you can easily you can make really good outplays if you can hit the double stun because late game if you hit one Q and then out, you kill someone, a squishy.
Nice. I like that. Okay. Let's get into some pre-game setup then. Let's talk first summoner spells that you take. I didn't say Nighthawk because I didn't ask you for summoners because I'm assuming it's Flash Smite. But what about Lux? What are some summoners? And then let's go into runes after that.
Okay, so if you're confident in your lane, I would say flash teleport, or if you're not that confident, I would say flash barrier.
Mhm.
So if you're against things like assassins again, I would always go barrier. Barrier
Okay.
is usually the smartest option. If you're against things like Twisted Fate, Vagar, Ari, I would go cleanse because you just need the distance. Even in Anivia,
Hmm.
anything with like chain CC. I mean, I wouldn't say chain CC, but like undodgeable CC, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't dodge Twist Fate.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't really dodge
Point and
Vagar.
click CC. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
those
true.
kind of things. I
Okay.
would run cleanse. I would never run ignite. I see a lot of people running ignite even in support, but even in support, I wouldn't run ignite on Lux because it's
Huh.
just you never get in range. It's just a wasted summoner in the end. Especially
All
late
about that
game, it's
damage,
really
man.
wasted on you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. She's a long range champ. Why would you ever
Yeah.
purposely get in range for the ignite? Although that's what I
Mm.
take because I'm dumb. Let's talk about runes now. What do you go in runes?
I would go sorcery first. So
Mhm.
arcane comet is a must because Ares is really bad because her auto attacks are terrible. Phase
Okay.
rush is obviously bad. Then mana flow band. I would say you go mana flow band 80 or 90% of the time. If you're against like a really strong AP mage,
Hmm.
like let's say LeBlanc, Katarina, you can also go nullifying orb if you're
Hmm.
I wouldn't say scared, but like not as confident. Then I
Okay.
would go Transcendence to give you the CDR, because CDR is pretty big on Lux.
Yeah.
Or you can also go Absolute Focus, because most of the time you're going to be high HP, so you're going to do that bonus damage. And
Okay.
then I would go Gathering Storm, just so you can scale better into late game.
Right. Okay.
And then I would go, is it Precision? Yeah, Precision, secondary, with Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace.
Okay.
Presence of Mind on Lux is like maybe the best thing that's happened to Lux
Yeah, I bet her
because
cooldown is super short on her ult.
Yeah, so when I play Lux, I have 40% CDR, and when you kill someone with ult rank 3, it has like an 8-second cooldown on ult.
Oh my gosh, that's so dumb.
It's like insane.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. What else?
I
Is
know
there any
pros,
alternative?
yeah,
What? Yeah.
you can take, like, pros take, what's it called? The inspiration. So
Okay.
I know when Bjergsen played it against TL, he took
Mhm.
Dematerializer and the boots. So you
Good
can go
boots.
that if you want to push and roam. But I think in low elo you're never going to do that. You're just going to
Yeah.
like. I don't think low. I don't know how to use Dematerializer, so I don't think low elo players are going to know how to correctly use Dematerializer either.
I mean, I think especially since it got nerfed too, it's even more. You got to be more choosy, I guess, when you use it and what to use it on, as opposed to before you could just kind of use it whenever.
Yeah.
But what about the micro runes? What are you going there?
So if you're, I almost like I would say on every champ you go double adaptive force, because unless you're like say not as confident, I say if you're confident on the champ, you always go double adaptive force, and then you just see how many people are armor, how many people are magic resist, or if you're still confident but not too confident, you can go for the thing that's in your lane. So say if they have a full AD team, but they have
Yeah.
a Zyra, for example, in your
Yeah.
lane,
Uh-huh.
then you can go magic resist, even though the whole team's AD. I don't think it would matter as much because
Okay.
it would keep you alive in laning phase and then just
Yeah.
transition you easy into the late game.
Okay. All right, good to know. Let's talk about starting items. I didn't really ask Nighthawk this because you got basically a couple choices when you're jungler, but with mid lane, it kind of opens up a little bit. Are you usually building Dorn's Ring, a Dark Seal, Corrupting Pot, or is it the same all the time? Or if it's different, then when do you build what? What do you start out with as Lux?
So I always go Doran's Ring because
Okay.
you really need the HP and the mana. But
Uh-huh.
I always pick up a Dark Seal, like either first back or second back.
Okay. And explain again
It's just
what Dark
depending on
Seal
code.
is for. What does Dark Seal do?
So Dark Seal, I usually build into Magi's, but you can use Dark Seal to just have more sustain. So if you have
Okay.
your refillable potion, it heals for more, and it gives you additional mana. And
Okay.
it's really, I wouldn't say, I don't really like having two Doran's rings. I mean, I think two Doran's ring is fine, but three is like really uncalled for. So I
Okay.
usually do two Doran's ring and a Dark Seal, depending on who I'm against. So if
Okay.
I'm against so if I can't walk into range to auto attack against certain champs like
Yeah.
Zed, LeBlanc, things like that, I would always go the two Doran's ring and Dark Seal. I go the double Doran's rings for the HP more than the mana, and I
Okay.
go a Dark Seal just it's because it's a super. So whenever you're playing mid, you always end up on like either 800, 900 gold first back,
Mm-hmm.
and you always want another Doran's ring, and then sometimes you don't have enough for like an amplifying tome, and I really don't like starting boots. I don't like
Gotcha.
buying boots, so it's just like a gold efficient item.
Okay, can you explain a little bit now? This is something that I actually have questions with because I do see a lot of pros do this and higher elo people do this, but why the double Dorn's ring? Like, I know somebody's, because I would ask this question, why not put that gold towards building some of the components for your first, major item? Won't getting a double Dorns and a Dark Seal, won't that kind of slow you down? And if not, like, let us know why that's the optimal pick to go double Dorns.
Okay, so double Dorans is just because it gives you like really good mana regen. So
Okay.
because if you're CSing correctly, like if you're killing the minions, you're not missing too much CS. You'll get I think Doran's Ring gives you 4. It gives you 4 mana per minion killed, something
Okay.
like that.
I think they removed that, but I'm not sure. I think they went back to mana regen.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm checking it right now. They did take that out. It's
I
just
believe-
5 mana.
Okay. Oh yeah, they changed it to 5 mana per 5 seconds. Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Good to
say
clarify.
even 5 mana per 5 seconds is really good. I think they took out the 4 mana per minion killed because of Galio. because Galio used to build 3 Doran's rings, and then he used to just queue a wave and get back all the mana he got from his queue. Yeah. Same with Diana. But even I don't think pros get it just for the. So the thing is, if you buy Amplifying Tome, you're just getting AP, right? But if you buy Doran's ring, you might be getting 5 less AP, but you're getting more mana and you're getting more health.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of why I wanted to ask that, because that's always a question that I've had. I've never actually looked at the numbers itself, but it seems like that would be, you know, pretty good. And again, you know, surviving in lane, being able to wave clear, not running out of mana, because chances are you won't be getting blue in this elo. So yeah, I think that explains a good deal.
I think that's all elos, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, unless you're on a team. And even then, I guess
you ask for one. Like,
you should be friends.
People are nice when you ask for it, right? If you say, "Can I have this blue?" they'll say yes, but they won't offer it to you.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. I've only jungled for 2 days. I have not given 1 blue. Just kidding.
But
I have if they ask.
Yeah,
exactly.
You would say yes. But...
It's true. I have. Okay. Good. Okay. Now walk us now through the early, mid, late game. What's your goals in each stage of the game? What are you looking for? And kind of walk us through that, or talk us through that.
Okay. So I always invade with Lux. Lux is like prime invade champion.
You starting E or Q? Actually, let's start that first. I always forget this. What skill order? Let's talk about skill order first.
Okay. So you can go E, it gives you shove in lane, but if you communicate with your team that you want to invade, either in champ select or when you come back, then I would say you can go Q to invade. Okay. But otherwise, I would say always start E. It gives you shove, so you have lane priority, so you can fight over things like Scuttler and things like that.
Okay.
And then after, I would go E, Q, then W, and then max E.
Max E, okay. Okay, and then
max Q, then max W.
Okay, all right, good to know. Okay, so now that we got the skill order, now talk us through the stages of the game.
Okay,
so you said invade. Invade every game.
I would.
What if you're against a blitz though? What if you're against a blitz or a Braum?
Okay, so against blitz, there's a really good invade thing, right? So you sit in the, so you know red buff, so you see red buff, and then there's the banana bush. So you just wait in that bush, and they almost always walk through red.
Okay.
And then if you just wait there, you can kill even if they have blitz.
Okay. I'm gonna try it tomorrow. If I die, I'm coming after you.
If they invade, though, this only works if they invade.
If they invade, okay, gotcha. All right, so go ahead.
This is just a good counter invade.
Okay, go ahead. I won't interrupt you anymore. Go ahead. Early game.
That's fine. So early game, you just wanna shove. You wanna shove as hard as possible, even especially against things like Zed, LeBlanc.
Okay.
With LeBlanc, you just have to watch out for things like her chain, but apart from that, you're fine. Most bad matchups like Yasuo, Katarina, you can abuse them early still. Like level 1 to 3, you can shove them in.
Okay.
And either you're gonna chunk them so that they have to back early, or you're gonna have a decent back where you can get your second Dorans. And then once you get your second Dorans, I think you're in a much better place because you can use your E to farm rather than auto attacking. Because I think that's where most people's problem are, walking into auto attack and just getting chunked out.
What's an ideal amount of gold that you want to have before backing? Like 1,000, 900, 1,000. I mean, let's say in perfect scenario. Yeah.
750 at least.
Okay.
I would say first back.
Okay. Getting a Doran's ring.
If you have more, so which gives you a Doran's ring and Dark Seal.
Okay.
Then if you have 900, you can get the refillable paw. If you have 1,000, you can get a refillable paw and a pink ward.
Okay. All right. So at least 750.
Yeah, that's first back. Yeah.
Okay. And why the shoving? Is it so that you can get prio for your jungler? Is
Yeah,
that
you get
okay?
pyro for your jungler, and you either poke your enemy laner out of lane,
Mhm.
or you can get like a couple turret plates, maybe,
Okay.
depending on if you have vision of their jungler.
Assuming you ward properly too, right? And keeping vision. Uh,
I wouldn't say necessarily warding properly, but just knowing where their jungler is.
where they're at. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. That's a
that's
good
why the
skill to
invade
train.
helps.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, all right. So shoving in. What about mid game and late game, or not late game, mid late game? But also talk us through what items you're looking to buy here.
Okay,
Throughout this.
so the first real item you want to get is I usually go Lost Chapter into Sorks into Ludens.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, and then I go Death Cap almost all the time, or Magi's. Sometimes
Nice.
I go Lost Chapter into Magi's. No, Lost Chapter into Boots into Magi's, depending on how ahead I am.
Okay.
Okay, but if it's me, I like always get it anyway, even if you're like getting destroyed.
I love
right?
it. All right. Cool.
Because later on you can get like free assists from just pressing W.
There it is. I love it. Okay. Cool. All right. So lost chapter and first major item then is Ludens and Sork boots, I guess.
Ludens.
Okay. All
You
right. Go
can
ahead.
go tier, but it takes so long to actually work out. Because I knew this one Lux player who used to build tier every game, and they used to just be so good on it because they would just not fight over things. But it
Nice.
takes so long to stack up a tier on Lux. It's actually
Okay.
insane.
All right, now go get us through the mid game play. Now that laning phase is kind of over, are you just looking to group, get a pick? What's your game plan now?
Oh yeah. So you always want to pink ward one side, one of your bushes in mid lane.
Okay,
It depends. And then you want to stand in that bush and put a normal ward over so you can see who's coming
gotcha.
in.
Yep.
And then if you land one Q, you can either chunk them out of lane or you can just kill them.
Okay. What's the combo, by the way? So I see this. It's Q. If you hit the Q, you E, then R, and then detonate E. Is that correct? I never actually knew the combo.
So,
Okay.
So you can Q and then put your E, and then you
Uh-huh.
can alt and detonate E at the same time.
Okay, gotcha. I was always wondering that. Okay, so that's good for getting picks if you get somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But most of the time in lane, you're just going to be poking with E, and then you're
Mhm.
going to be looking for a Q into the alt.
Okay, gotcha.
And one thing I see people that don't do is every time you land Q, just alt.
Okay.
Like it doesn't matter if they're low, but like
Okay,
in lane,
just alt.
if
Yeah.
you Q someone, just alt. It will just chunk them out. Because
Okay.
you can only land so many Qs in lane. Because either there's
It's
minions
true.
or
The
you're
angle.
just not
Yeah.
going to be able to. So if you see a Q and you hit it, just take the alt.
Okay, good to know. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the late game and other items you're building after Ludens and Sorks and Magi's, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
and and Death Cap.
Yeah, Death Cap, Ludens are key items. You don't have to go Magi's. That's just me.
Okay.
Then Void Staff. Those three.
Okay.
With those three, you have, let's say, really good pick potential.
Okay.
So if you if you hit your light binding into your lucent singularity into your final spark, it just like demolishes them.
Deleted. I like it. Okay.
You,
is there
you, like
anything
most times you don't even
situation?
need your E. You
Yeah.
don't even need your E. Just Q out and they die.
So what do you is there anything situational that you might build, like for example Morello's, or because that just seems like the AP item to build if they have a lot of healing on your team. Do you ever do that, or are you just straight up
Yeah,
going
but
this way?
Morello's is never situational for me. I always build Morello's.
Oh, you
So
do?
Morello's is always my fourth item.
Fourth item. Okay, so okay, I
Yes,
got
so
you.
after it depends on. So if I'm against Vlad or something, I'll go Ludens into Morello's.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'd say some situational items are Zhonya's and Banshees. Those are my two. Those are my two situational items. Banshees
Okay.
against things like Ari, Katarina, just any strong AP. I would say.
Okay. LeBlanc maybe?
Yeah,
No.
so LeBlanc
Okay.
especially. I think
Okay.
Locke goes well into LeBlanc though, so it
Okay.
depends on you.
That would be me getting deleted by LeBlanc. Okay. All right. Late game. I guess it's more of the same. Trying to get deeper vision. Trying to get picks.
Sieging, like
Sieging.
that's the
Yeah.
name of the game.
Okay.
Late game, it's all about sieging.
Okay.
You can like get Herald, and then you can just stay around Herald. If you land a Q, your team can follow up. Just 5-man group with Herald, and just try and make picks.
Okay. So now then, let's talk about if in Champ Select, who are you looking to ban? Probably as Lux, or you personally, and then I guess in general, like who do you usually ban mid lane?
Okay, so most of the time I don't really ban for my lane. I
Okay.
usually just ban OPs in general,
Yeah.
which would be things like Nasus. I think I always ban Nasus. Unless I'm
Mhm.
ADC, then I always ban Draven.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But who
And
would
then
be then like a bad like who do you want to ban then probably for our listeners?
Yasuo is the bad matchup. I'd say
Okay, Yasuo.
Yasuo is the worst matchup.
Okay.
Zed isn't too bad, but it's also pretty bad. Like I would say
Okay.
he can all in you by just pressing R. So
True. Okay.
you could go he against what is it, Zed, you can always go thing which I forgot to mention earlier. You can always go stopwatch
Yeah, stopwatch. Okay.
in your secondary.
Secondary.
Yeah, but I would say I would ban Katarina. Katarina is
Okay.
like my #1 ban in mid lane. Either
Okay.
Katarina or Yasuo. Yeah, I'll
Alright,
go
good to
Katarina
know.
Yasuo. And
Okay. Any final tips like or any like secret things that people might not know about playing Lux? Also, Nighthawk and Mike the support, you're welcome to jump in if there's anything you want to add about Lux. If you got any tidbits that our listeners might want to hear. Is there anything else?
well,
Yeah,
there you go.
I was just going to say that you said it perfectly earlier. If you land that Q, just go for the ult. It's not on that long of a cooldown.
It's good to know. Yeah.
It's such a good way to just knock somebody out of the fight and have them go back. And it's sort of like what we said, where it's like the Morgana or the Blitzcrank effect. If you do land that Q, they're probably going to be dead, and it only takes one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What else? Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, I've got three tips. With the combo, this one works if you're able to get an auto attack off. So the optimal combo, if you can auto attack, is Q. You throw the E, proc the passive with your R, then you detonate your E, and then you auto attack, and that would be the highest damage combo possible. But again, like you have to get an auto attack range, and it's fairly unrealistic in a lot of matchups.
I would say
The
that
second,
support. In support, you can do things like those combos because you can actually walk into range to auto attack.
True. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
second one is to sort of elaborate on why pushing in low elo is also very good. Is you force your enemy to last hit under turret, and people in lower elo are typically not that good at last hitting under turrets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's a pretty free way to build a CS advantage.
Yep.
And one of the things that I like doing in lower elo is creating maximum tilt situations. So if you use your push advantage with Lux, you ward the enemy jungle and you start stealing their buffs with your ultimate.
Yeah.
And when you start doing that to the enemy jungler, that's
Tilted.
one person tilted, and then the second person tilted because the mid laner gets flamed.
That's right. I love it. Okay, great. I like it because now we're going into the psychological, getting into the enemy's head. I love it. Okay. Any final tips on Lux before we move on? Style, that was a great analysis. Thank you for bringing that, champ.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is if you're actually going to go play Lux support anyway, take Aftershock. I mean,
Yeah,
at
I
least
saw that.
then, if you run it down, you'll be tankier when you run it down.
I did.
So
I saw
I can get
Bizzleberry. I saw Bizzleberry making that. So, or
Everyone's
building
doing
that.
it now, right?
Are they?
It's
Okay.
pretty meta, Aftershock Lux now, because
I
anytime
get-
you land Q,
Yeah.
you get like what is it? Thing reduction, right? Damage reduction, thanks to Aftershock, so you don't just like instantly die.
Okay. Yeah, I get my meta from watching Bizzleberry. That's what I do. Okay, well, Style, thank you so much, man, for bringing Lux to the table. So we had a jungler, we had a mid laner. All right, now, Mike, the support. Who are you bringing? What champion are you bringing to the table for us low elo guys to start climbing, and gals?
The OG lizard wizard, it's your boy Renekton.
That's what I'm talking about. I wanted to say this earlier because I've been playing Renekton. That was my main last month, and I still love the crocodile. He got a little bit of buffs, and so I'm really excited to hear what you got to say about him. But Renekton, good for climbing low elo. Can you tell us why you think Renekton is a good champ for our listeners to try climbing in low elo?
Well, I would say for starters is that he's actually just simple to play, and I think that is a pretty big deal in lower elo. Where if you're
Yes.
if you're unexperienced in the game, like you're not really too keen on the macro, just having a mechanically simple champion allows you to divert that much more attention to like the things like what is my wave doing, what's the enemy jungler doing. So that already just helps you pick up the game faster. I think that also when you just play Renekton in lower elo, his trade damage almost always seems to catch people off guard.
Yep.
Like you can chunk people if you manage your Fury properly, you probably chunk them for like a third to half HP depending on your levels, right? And that always catches people off guard. And in spite of the fact that he's simple, he still has skill within his combos. Like if weaving in auto attacks, very important.
Yep.
And I would say like one of my favorite thing, at least with Renekton for such a simple champion, is that he has very versatile build paths. I think that is for me at least the big selling point.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like 8 items that are all very good on him situationally, and it just depends on your gold income. It depends on the matchup. It depends on the team composition and what your actual play style is. Do you want to like go as a sweeper in a team fight, or do you want to AFK split push? It's up to you, really.
Nice. Okay. Let's talk about then some of his weaknesses and what to watch out for if you're looking to pick up Renekton.
If we at least just talk about lane, I would say really his main weakness is probably a lot of range matchups, and I would say the big two that are off the top of my head are probably Quinn and Jace. Jace is probably the worst matchup for him imaginable because Jace just out damages you, and he can knock you away as well.
Yeah.
And the weakness as well is that you have to really commit to the Renekton lifestyle, so to speak, and you have to try to go for the 25, 30-minute win. And so it requires a bit of discipline. It requires like forcing play, so to speak, or forcing enemies to do something on the map.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to know because and what I liked you mentioned was different play styles. Like Renekton can kind of assimilate to different play styles. I know I like to kind of play him more of a split pusher, more of a power farmer type deal, just because I don't know, I like that style. But he can also be pretty decent in a team fight. I think there are certain things that you need within your team. You don't want to just be diving right in there, but there are certain things that you can do to make it work, and that's what's really cool about him. And I know he's more of a early mid game champion, I would think, right? I'm assuming late game he's not that great. What do you think about that? Because I know that's what a lot of people say as far as his weaknesses go. Do you agree with that?
I agree with it, and sometimes Renekton does have outs in a late game situation because, like off the top of my head, Renekton is probably in the top 3 duelist categories because of how Spear of Shojin works on him. So you do have an out in winning the 1v1 split push. And sometimes if the team fight goes exactly according to plan and you have the right build, you can play as a sweeper, so you can just clean up and you can get maybe a triple kill just on people that are low and have no cooldowns. Because Renekton, typically, like you have a very heavy AD build, you can just really clean house if you get the right situation, but it's out of your control, which is an issue.
Right. Okay. All right. Good to know. So now let's talk about pre-game stuff. What summoners are you looking to take? Because there's obviously several that you could do here. I've seen a lot because I watch a lot of Renekton gameplay. But what summoners are you looking to take here?
The big two really is just teleport and ignite, and it's difficult to say. I would say if you're really confident in your 1v1 ability, ignite is good because it gives you just that bit of extra damage.
Okay.
But teleport, I would say, in like a rule of thumb that can help you out is teleport is pretty good in range matchups where you're probably going to get chunked out and you're going to get suboptimal backs.
Okay, so you're saying in addition to flash, so flash and teleport or flash and ignite. Okay, I just didn't want anybody to be confused and take teleport ignite because that is something I would do.
It could work.
I mean, if you're very confident, then go for it. But yeah, no. So flash and ignite or flash and teleport. Again, you made good points on when to take either of the two. So let's talk about runes now. What are you typically building here on Renekton?
So lately, for the people that keep up with the changes, Conquer has been popping up with all the nerfs to the damage scaling. I would say that PTA is or press the attack, and the precision tree is better choice 90% of the time, because press the attack just fits so perfectly with your trading pattern on Renekton, where it allows you to get 2 auto attacks with your stun, because it counts as your stun counts as 2 auto attacks. And if you get that 1 extra auto attack, you get the bonus damage, and then you can commit to the all in, and you can keep chasing with your dash, or you can just whip out his Call the Meek, which is his AoE Q, and you can just back off again. So it really does allow you to get massive chunks in trades. And Conqueror is probably your good choice against tanks like Malphite in particular. But I don't think that Renekton actually really struggles against a lot of tanks. I would just say really Malphite is the worst one out of the lot.
Okay. What about the rest of the runes in that precision tree?
Triumph, because extra gold is very useful for snowballing. Renekton's build, on average, is one of the most expensive builds in the game. You have Spear of Shojin, which is, if anyone can help me out, I think it's 3,400 gold.
Yeah, 3,400.
Okay. Yeah, Black Cleaver is 3,200. If you want to get a Death Dance, that's also 3,500. Or Yumu's Ghostblade, which I think is called Top Renekton only. He builds that a lot.
Yeah.
But so like the Triumph, also the healing in team fights, it's also pretty solid. And then Legend of Tenacity, very good in a lot of matchups, and also for team fighting again. Renekton, if you're very glassy, you really need the Tenacity, because if you absorb 1 CC but you have the burst, you can still get out of fights. And the bottom row is very stylistic. I personally have been really liking Last Stand. I think it's a pretty busted rune with how much bonus damage it gives. But I also like Coup de Grace, because obviously it helps you execute your targets that much faster. Very good for snowballing. And then the secondary, you really are kind of stuck with 2 choices, in my opinion. You can go into the Domination secondary, Taste of Blood, pretty good into range matchups or sustained matchups like Vlad. But Sudden Impact is pretty much core most of the time. And at the bottom of the row, Ravenous Hunter, almost all the time as well.
Okay.
And
do you ever go anything else other than domination?
Secondary as an option against range matchups that are very annoying. I like taking either Revitalize or Bone Plating, depends on how they trade with you. If they're very bursty or if they're just chipping at you. So the second win, very good. Or Bone Plating and Revitalize, because Renekton has a lot of healing in his kit.
Okay. And what about the micro runes? Are you taking the adaptive stuff, or do you take attack speed? What do you do for the micro runes?
Yeah, so lately I've actually looked into what some of the higher level players are doing, and they actually take the attack speed in the first slot, and then they take adaptive and then magic resist or armor. But the attack speed is actually really good, because Renekton is on the higher end of the base attack speed champion, so that 10% goes a bit further than with most.
Okay, nice.
And because Renekton's trading is very dependent on Fury, so if having more attack speed allows you to build Fury that much faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so even though you technically lose a bit of damage because AD is so good on Renekton, but having that extra Fury that much more often is better for your laning phase in general.
Okay. All right, let's talk about skill order. What skills are you usually looking to level up?
Pretty much Qmax all the time. That's his AoE. It's his main bursting tool. Does a pretty absurd amount of damage when you have 40 Fury. Secondary, Slice and Dice, because every time you put points into it,
that's his W or his E?
It's his E.
That's his E.
The
dashing. Okay.
When you put points into it, every time you put a point, it's something like 2 or 3 seconds extra cooldown reduction. So it gives you that much more stickiness onto carries and team fights, and it scales insanely well with Spear of Shojin. And then the W last, because which is his stun, because a lot of the W is really dependent on your Fury and not so much the skill points itself.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about typical builds. What are you normally building here? And then you can also talk about like situational stuff in there.
I would say that.
Let's start starting item first. Starting item first. Let's talk about that.
We'll do starting item. That's a good one. Okay. Dorn's Blade most of the time against almost any melee matchup.
Okay.
And Dorn's Shield if you're playing against range, because the sustain is actually very good for the first part of the laning phase.
Mm-hmm.
And the also health potion speaks for itself. And having the Dorn shield against range matchups with the second win gives you a surprising amount of sustain if they really like to chip at you.
Okay. All right. What do you building after that?
Builds, it depends. It's so situational. It's also player preference. I've actually just got the list of items here. Let me get that out. I would say probably Black Cleaver is core 90% of the time as a first item. It's fairly cost efficient on Renekton in terms of what you get out of it. And the stacking armor shred is really good. The 20% CDR for 3,200 gold is pretty strong as well.
Okay.
And
do you ever build Tiamat?
yeah, I actually made a note out of Tiamat. I think that with the Tiamat nerfs, I would say that Tiamat isn't core. And what I mean with that it isn't core is that you literally just don't have to build it all the time because Tiamat, I think that with the extra expense added, and also that the Spear of Shojin being so good, Tiamat really falls into the play style of I want to push my wave and I want to either roam, help my jungler, or invade the enemy jungle and steal his camps.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
So
that's a good point to make because if you're trying to set up a freeze, don't get Tiamat because that's going to auto push your wave. Good to hear that because I know a lot of players build Tiamat, me being one of them. So it's good to hear that, differences in what are you trying to accomplish here because maybe you do want to shove in and roam with your jungler. And if that's the case, then maybe Tiamat's still a good early buy. But if not, if you got a pretty good lead and want to freeze or save up for some of these bigger items, and that's a good case to.
Don't you get Tiamat so you can auto cancel and things like that?
That's part of it too because when you double, you can auto cancel with the when you double.
I don't know how to auto cancel, but I assume that's what it's for.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It works really well in his trading pattern. So definitely, you should probably look into it and test around with both of those because Tiamat I know is a lot of people buying it. But go ahead. We'll continue with what other items you build on Renekton.
Let's see. So Spear of Shojin, I would say also really solid item on Renekton. I don't know how much time I have to explain why it's so good, but essentially with how Renekton's kit works with his stun, which is either 2 or 3 auto attacks, depending on how much fury you have, your spells start coming that much faster off of cooldown, and you're similar to like the Jax level of Shojin abuse, so to speak, that you just get a lot of spells off of cooldown. It gives him absurd burst. The extra attack speed as well helps with fury stacking. It's all this, and also it's HP, 20% CDR, and a lot of AD. It's all meshes together. And other items, Sterix is really good because the passive, which is the bonus shield, it scales with his ultimate because Sterix only gives you shielding based off your bonus HP, and his ultimate counts as bonus HP. So that is it's a very solid item against champs like Fiora, which do health percent true damage, and also Vayne. But also in general, just a solid team fighting item.
Nice. Okay. What else?
More items. Yumu's. I think that top Renekton only. I think that's what his name is.
Renekton top only.
Renekton
top only. Yeah. He's popularized Yumu's a lot, and I actually like it quite a lot because the movement speed, if you play with a flank playstyle in team fights and you want to burst carries, it's very solid. Like depending on the situation, trading 2 for 1. Where let's say you kill 2 carries or you kill a carry and a support as Renekton and you die for it, or your GA pops, it's a really good trade. So the Yumu's it gives you that much more flexibility in team fights.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, Guardian Angel, fairly standard on bruisers. Just gives you good team fighting options. Titanic Hydra, if you do commit to the Tiamat, it works very nicely with Renekton's ultimate because Titanic Hydra gives you bonus on hit damage based off of max health. So if you pop your ultimate, you just get that much more on hit damage. And it, like Style mentioned as well, that it works with your combo setup.
Yeah. Okay.
And then last, I think Death Dance, but it's a really expensive item, but it helps his team fighting a lot by converting the damage that he receives from burst into a dot. So if you can get some healing off with auto attacks and his Q, it works out nicely. But again, it's 3,500 gold, so it's a luxury item more than a necessary item.
A lot to commit to. Okay. All right, let's talk about gameplay. Talk us through early, mid, and late. What are you trying to accomplish here as Renekton? You know, what is your play style? What are you trying to do as a Renekton player?
In almost every situation as Renekton, you really are going for the lane win. That's the reason why you pick the character. He's one of the most oppressive characters in the 1v1, especially with press the attack, which gives him a pretty large amount of burst. And so the way you get the lead is it's a combination of either killing the enemy or denying them, and just making sure you last it properly and get the plates. And as soon as Renekton starts getting those big ticket items, that's when you can further increase the lead.
Okay, so in mid game, are you looking more to split push or shove out and roam? What are you trying to do in mid game here?
I would say that you should look at the team composition and how your team is doing in general. I would say it's very experience based, for lack of better terms. But I would say that most of the time you really are going for the split push. But if you have, let's say your jungler and bot lane are doing fine, you can group up with them, like losing 1 or 2 minion waves when you already denied the enemy that much, just to get things like dragons or extra turrets. To accelerate the game state that much faster actually does work out for you. So you actually, by losing something, you actually gain more for yourself. And again, like the AFK split pushing is sadly what you mostly are picking for. But when you start building that much of a lead on Renekton, 2v1s are very realistic.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. That's probably one of the most favorite parts about playing him. What about late game now? Because again, late game seems to be his weakest point. What are we looking to do here? I think you mentioned it maybe earlier. Probably split pushing, but maybe cleaning up a team fight if you can. Is that about right, or what would you add to that?
Yeah, sadly, he is pigeonholed into roughly those two situations. So if you do have the Spear of Shojin, you're probably, in my book, probably somewhere in the top 3 of the best duelists in the game. So you depending on what the matchup is, like, you know, Jax has probably hit his worst matchup in the really late game. You can just win the 1v1, probably win the 1v2 if it's a favorable matchup and the jungle is also squishy. But also, like you reiterated earlier, that the sweeping playstyle is also very good. Like if you find half HP carries with no cooldown, such as no flash or no dash, such as Ezreal, you just get on them. You trade either your flash or use your dash and moves. You get on them and they're instantly dead.
Okay, nice. All right, well, let's talk about then, if you're trying to play Renekton, who do you typically want to ban or look to ban in the top lane if you're playing him?
So it depends on what elo you are. I think that Jace is not that popular in the lower elos. So let's say if you actually do make it to platinum, probably start banning Jace because he's still fairly popular at this moment. But in general, I think that Urgot is probably your best ban, because Urgot is a fairly oppressive champion with Conquer at this moment.
Yeah, I usually ban Urgot just because he's that OP. All right, cool. Is there any other specific like tips or tricks that you can do with Renekton? Anybody else, Nighthawk style, you can throw anything in there if you want to about Renekton, just as we wrap it up.
I've never played Renekton, or at least I haven't played him very much, but I do know that he is a pain in the butt to lane against, so I know that he's a very strong champion.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, cool. Style, you got anything good?
No. I do play Renekton when I get auto for top lane, but that's just because Renekton's a big bully.
Yeah,
but apart from that, I wouldn't play him. I think Jax does well against him. That's all I know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of very strong top laners at the moment. I think part of it is itemization as well with the Conqueror. I mean, you got Riven, you got Jax, you got Urgot, even Kayle.
I think Renekton does pretty well against Riven, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, there's just a lot of good top laners, I feel like, with just the items and the runes. But Renekton, I feel like has slowly been making a climb. Again, they buffed him recently. So yeah, it looks like, I mean, I like Renekton. I mentioned on stream that if I don't get, because I'm a support main, but if I decide to go top, and usually I will if I'm just solo queue, then Renekton's my go-to. So really, I can confirm that. Although I haven't been climbing lately, but that's just more me. But anyways, that's all the time we got. We've run about an hour, but I want to thank my co-hosts again, Nighthawk, Style, Mike. I appreciate you guys bringing in these champions. And I definitely, I know, I mean, I already play Renekton, but I definitely am going to try Mumu and Lux for sure, and see if I can get some wins. You know, normal games, of course. I'm not just going to first pick it in a rank, but I don't know, unless you guys think I should. No.
You
Okay.
can with that.
Okay. You said 100%. All right. I just needed that vote of confidence. Thank you, Nighthawk. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. But that's going to do it. If you guys have questions, you guys can email us at the allinpodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at the allinpodcast. We really appreciate your support. Go ahead and subscribe on iTunes. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. You know, make up stuff if you have to. It's all good. All the support counts and it helps. So we appreciate it. But until next time, don't tilt too hard. Enjoy your climb on the rift, and we will see you on the next episode.